good morning. Welcome to another episode of Papa's Workshops. These are for Adams, Brady, Luke, and Brenna. But before we get started, we need to check in with my assistant. There she is. You ready for a little treat? There you go. You ready for a hard day's work today, girl? All right, let's get to it. All right. Well, this episode we're continuing on the Newport Secretary, which we're going to be doing this till next spring or summer probably. Anyway, we've pretty much finished the case, the lower case, except for the gallery dividers. But I wanted to put on the dye on some of the dividers as I'm putting them in, so that I be sure I get the color all the way back in there. So I made a storyboard for my finish, which I try to do this one thing. So this is the dye that I've chosen. It's a water soluble trans tint dye, and this is where I put on another more brown on top of that to see what it would do, but I've decided just the one coat will be right. And then I got 3 coats of shellac, and then in these 4 squares, there's not a whole lot of difference in them, but I've tried 4 different colors or 4 shades of brown gel stain to use as a glaze. And it doesn't really show up on this flat thing. I mean, it darkens them a little bit, but in the carvings in that the dark stuff will stay in the crevices and give it more of an aged look. So I like to do that. So and then the shellac, it's garnet shellac, so it's a dark shellac. So some more coats of shellac I need to put on top of this to kind of see what it look like. But it gets darker. I know that looks pretty red, but it gets darker, and then the cherry itself will age. So that's what we're going to do next, is put that dye on, and then we'll work on the gallery dividers, and then it's up for grabs. We can do drawers or the door, so we'll go from there. All right, I got the dye on the case, and it came out even more red than the sample piece. It's always sort of worrisome, but by the time I add the other coats of shellac in that, it will darken. So in the end, it'll be all right, I guess. It's done. So anyway, I've got the vertical dividers installed. I just had to fit those so that they end up right flush with the thing. So now I've got to there's the horizontal dividers on these 2 outside ones. So I've got it on the case side, so I need to transfer the height of that to this. And I just used blocks to measure up to the bottom of this and marked it, and then the same with that. And then in here there's just one, and it's at the same level as this, so I took that measurement and made 2 marks there. And then there's 3 drawers, or 2 horizontal dividers in there for the 3 drawers, so those will have to be done too. So we're going to work on that. The other thing with the horizontal dividers is that they have a V, because you've got this bead, and then there's the bead on the face of that has to, so there's sort of a rounded V is what shows in the front. And I've just got a straight dado here, but it'll be flush in the front. So I got a choice of whether to do a V all the way back, or do a dado and then just a V for the last little bit. I'll have to play with which one's going to be easier. So here's the base assembly, and I've got a coat of shellac on that. See, so already it's not nearly as red. So once I get some more shellac on there, gotta rub it down. Oh, and the other thing to note was the water-based stain, it's going to raise the grain. It's anytime you get it wet with water, it kind of has these little fuzzies that stick up. So I wiped everything down with a wet rag first and let that dry. And then I rubbed it down with a brown paper bag, which gets rid of some of those fuzzies, makes it smooth again. And so I still have a little bit of that, after it got wet again with the dye. But it's not nearly as bad. It's pretty smooth, but I'll probably rub it down before I put the shellac on there. So right now we got to work on the horizontals. All right, I have done the slots, the dados. So I did just a square dado, 3/16 to close to the front edge, and then I got the V shape. See there, I got that just in the front. I decided that, it's easy enough to do one or the other on the router table, but the V requires perfection. Everything's got to be perfectly parallel, and then I was worried about getting the width, since it's horizontal. This is the vertical one. I just thought it was going to take too much perfection, and with wood, that's sometimes hard to achieve. So this way it gives me a little bit of slop, and all I have to do is a little bit of handwork on this end for the horizontal pieces to get that to fit right. So now I got to cut the dividers. I had already glued up a bunch of 3/16 thick boards, and just used some stuff I had with a lot of sapwood in it, but I've got the good stuff on the edge, and so I just need to cut these up into pieces for my dividers, my horizontal dividers. And I've decided to, on the middle section, which I don't have up in there yet, but instead of go ahead and putting those dividers in right now, and then they're going to have to be set back because there's a door, the prospect door in front of those drawers. And I'm going to do is make a secret compartment. That's not too secret if I'm announcing it here, but the construction's going to be a little different, because what I'm going to do is make a box that fits in this space. So I'm going to make a box that is removable out the front, that has the 3 drawers in it. So that box will have to have the dividers for it. But I'm going to reconstruct that box once this is all glued up. And then we'll have a secret latch to be able to pull that box out of there. And the front of it will look just like it's supposed to. The 3 drawers will just be there in the dividers, and you won't see the box. And I've got a total of 6 secret compartments that I've planned for this, and I've not been showing those. But this one is going to require a different construction in that section. So that's why I'm bringing it up. All right, I got the horizontal ones fit into the dados. So now I've got to do the little triangle, or the little diamond shape there. I got to do that on the last little bit, so they'll slide all the way forward. And then they're going to have this, each one's going to have this shape, based on where it's at. And these 2 big ones there's 2 more vertical dividers that will go right there. So will have to make some dados on that, probably now while it's still square, before I cut the shape in the front anyway. So we're getting there. All right, we're getting close. I shaped the fronts on all those shelves, and I'm just in the process of trimming them. And here's what we have to do is make this little ramp, this little triangle shape, just for that last little bit, since we've got just a regular dado the rest of the way. So do that so they all fit. I went ahead and did we've got some vertical dividers here, and I did the V all the way back. That took less material out of this piece, and it's still pretty stiff, but I wanted to keep it as strong as possible. And I can cut the V on this, and then we've got the dado already up in the top. So once I cut the V, then I can trim it to fit the dado. So that eliminates having to be perfect at both ends. So that's I'm going to fit this last one, and then cut the verticals for that and get those all fit. All right, I got all of the dividers fit in there, and this is just a little temporary. I cut it to this height to make sure that we didn't get a bow in that when pushing these in. So, and what I'll do is I'll just use those at the back of the drawers for those things. So just a piece of scrap. So there we are. We've got our profile in the front. So we still need to round all of these. Now these 4 vertical ones get a pattern cut, and I've got it drawn out here on this one. And what I'm going to do is just use double-sided tape, stack all 4 of these together with this one on top, and just cut that out on the bandsaw or maybe the jigsaw, and then smooth it when they're all together so they'll have the same shape. And then they get that rounded profile on there once they're cut out. And these have, since this section is blocked out, right, that's what we've got, this difference, and that's what this little scroll pattern will make up for that distance. All right, I got the shape cut out here on all 4 of them. See? So now we're just gonna have to do the rounding on all of the dividers, horizontal and vertical. So that's the next step. All right, we got all the edges rounded here. I got these all done, and everything lines up pretty good. But there is one thing I forgot to do, so we got a little bit more work to do. Up on the, I know that's sideways, but we got these little drawers on top of the dividers, and it has these 2 little ledges that they run on. So what I've done is made just a very shallow dado on both sides, and then I cut some of the scrap from these dividers, and I'm going to glue that in so that it is with the grain, right? That way, when it expands and contracts, it will move with it. I mean, these are pretty fragile by themselves, but once that's glued in, that'll be pretty stable. And I did that on the main dividers. I already did it, so there and there. So I just got to do it on both sides of these center ones. And then one other thing I want to do before I put the die on it is, these drawers are not all exactly the same. You know, perfection is a hard thing to to achieve. So each drawer is going to be, you know, hand fitted. So we need a way to make sure that you get the drawers in the right spot. So I'm going to number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so forth. So I'm going to put a little mark here on the inside of each one of those so that after the fact, you know, someone takes the drawers and swap them around. They're not actually the same size. That there's a geometric proportion that they did from the bottom of the desktop to the inside. They divided it into 3s. So that distance is all the same. But the bottom one, this space is narrower because it includes this base material. And then these 3 guys here are exactly that same 1/3 here. And so then what's in the, you know, left over in the middle. But they did have a plan. So those are the couple things I got to finish up, and then we'll be ready to put the dye on those, and then I'll glue them in. Actually, what I might do before I glue them is cut the material for the drawers fronts, the drawer fronts, so I can fit it height-wise. So anyway, onward. All right, all the dividers are done. See, we've got our little ledges there for the little drawers that are going to go across the top. Everything's rounded. Still got the center one to do, but I'll do that later. That's going to be a different deal. So these are pretty much ready to put the dye on. So what I'm going to do is give them one last final sanding by hand with 220 grit so that they all have the absorption of the dye is similar. So I'm going to sand them and then take a damp rag and wet them down so that the grain you know, pops out. I can then rub off those little fuzzies before I put on the dye. So that's the steps there. And what to do next would be the question. Anyway, we'll think about that while we're working on the rest. Okay, I've got the all the dividers, put the dye on it, and I was getting ready to start gluing those in, but I got the locks for the lid. Those came in. Those have been ordered for a while. So that's from Ball & Ball, and these are made for a slant desk. See there, got the lip is at a slant. So I marked on the front where that's going to go, and had to measure down. I kind of set the lock where it's going to be. I kind of measured it down from the front side, and I drilled a hole the size of that center pin. And so now I need to put a mortise that is this shape right there to get that to set flat in there. So I just took a piece of cardboard and drilled the same hole in it, and it goes this way. So I can stick a drill bit in that hole and align that. So now I just need to mortise down about 3/8 on those 2 spots. Then we can get the lock all the way down flush. Then we can take a knife and mark the outside beds, and that's just looks like slightly under a 1/16. So we're going to go ahead and get that done. And then there is the other part of the lock is the latch part. So we'll need to mortise that up into the desk parts. We'll do that all now before I glue those dividers in. Just be easier to get around it, I think. Okay, I got the mortises for the locks. It's kind of a funky looking thing, but I was trying to keep as much meat as I could because of the screws. Over here, just the way the lock is, you can't really, you got to get that down in there. So anyway, the slant on the front does present a challenge. It's not as easy as putting in the straight ones. But anyway, I've got those done. So now we'll put some temporary screws in these and put the hinges on and place the catch. As you can see, that is, the pin is where is the center of where that needs to be, but the lock is actually shifted over, and the little plunger is over a little bit, so you can't just line it up. You got to put it all together. All right, we got the lock hardware in, so I can turn the key. I can hear it latch, and I can't pull it up. So turn that way. We can pull it. So there's the lock, and then we've got this piece there mortised in there. If I could focus on it, there we go. Whoops. There. So I just used a little piece of carbon paper to get me close, and then what I ended up doing was just marking where the screw holes went and screwed it in just on the surface until it was, then I took the knife and marked the edges. So we are there. So I think that's going to pretty much do it for this episode. It's going to be a little slow. Grandmother's had some health issues, and we're pretty much worked through that, I think. But then the holidays and that, so it may be maybe the first of the year before we get the next one in there. And what I'm probably going to do is I got to go ahead and glue in the gallery dividers, and then I think I will start, since I've got this laid out, I will start carving the shell in the door here, and then we got the two applied, so I'll start working on that, because I can work on that a couple hours at a time without too much trouble. So that's where we're at. Until next time.